Forever 314 says, what does Bruce think Eddie Guerrero would be doing today if he was still with us? I imagine he would get a kick out of everything Dirty Dominic's been doing. I know we don't talk about current stuff, Bruce, but I saw something last week that just made me grin ear to ear. I don't remember if it was Friday or Saturday, but Dominic Mysterio tweeted out a picture of his new piece of merch, his new shirt, Latino Cheat. And man, I just couldn't help but smile big. I know we don't talk about current stuff, but that was so cool. And I think Forever 314 has a great question. What do you think Eddie Guerrero would be doing in 2024 if he were still with us?
Well, first of all, I think that Eddie would be very proud of his son Dominic, and probably help coach him
Yep.
quite a bit. Truth be told, he would be helping to coach Dominic quite a bit, and Eddie was very fond of Dominic and thought that Dominic, even then we all did. The kid's going to be in the business. Little did we know, he wanted nothing to do with the business. But then he did, and he does, and he's awesome. I think Eddie would still be a part of it. I think Eddie would still be calling me and telling me everything that is wrong with it. And then at the end of the day, come back the next day and say, "You're right." Or no, Eddie would fight you, man. Eddie would fight you, and I enjoyed that. I always enjoyed the sparring sessions with Eddie on philosophy about the business, because Eddie was rooted in old school wrestling, old school tradition, in and out of the ring. But you also have to take into consideration that Eddie was also rooted in both American wrestling and what we know for the most part, today, even though the business has changed, American style wrestling, as well as lucha style wrestling and the luchadors, because his father promoted both. And his father was one of the most innovative promoters and performers of his day, Gory Guerrero. And Eddie learned all sides. It was a family business for Eddie. His mom was in the business. Everybody was in the business. And when you talk about eat, sleep, drink wrestling, that's what Eddie Guerrero did. It just was in his DNA and it was in his life. Eddie would be a part of the business, and Eddie would have very strong feelings about the business and continually looking to grow the business and find different ways to do the same things.
Fun question here from Jonathan, who says, hi, Bruce and Conrad. The 80s and 90s period was so great for heel managers. How was the decision made on which wrestlers to give to either Bobby, Jimmy Hart, Fuji, or Slick? That is interesting. I mean, I assume you guys just have a notebook sheet of paper and you got all the names. You want to make sure you're not too lopsided, just from an efficiency standpoint. And logistically, we can only have these guys manage so many, and who's touring there. And I know all that comes into play. But were you thinking about personalities as well? And how do you divide those up?
Yeah, I'm surprised no one's ever talked about this before. But we had a box in the corner,
Oh,
and it
gosh.
was like labeled "Box of Managers," and you just drew. You had a new talent come in, and your manager, okay, we'll see who's gonna get him. Oh, looky there, old Blue won the pony.
Simon says, what's one thing that you enjoyed from the Monday Night Wars and one thing you hated? So, with the benefit of hindsight, what's the one thing you miss about that era? And what's the one thing you're glad you don't have to deal with anymore?
Well, I love being live. At the time, I love being live, because when it's done, it's done. And whatever happened during that program was meant to happen, man, because it was live, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And that is what I loved most then. It's what probably I love most now as well. The the things that I didn't like. I hated. Well, first of all, I hated taping them because it gave you time to rethink and things of that nature, and play with it. I don't know. God, things that
While you're thinking about that, let me ask:
hated. It's weird.
has anybody ever used that against you?
What's
The
that?
whole if it was live, it's meant to happen. Like, does anybody go out there and fuck something up royally? Like they went way over on time, they botched something big, they said the wrong thing, they were in the wrong spot at the wrong time. They knew they messed up, you knew they messed up. They come through the curtain, and before you can blast them, they just put their hand on your shoulder and say, "It was live, Bruce. It was meant to happen. That's the way it was supposed to go because it was live."
Oh, I've had that, and I've had it the other way too, to where I've tried to say, "Hey, look, man, we knew what was supposed to happen. Nobody else did."
Okay.
That's the other one. So I've actually had both of those thrown in my face quite a bit. But you still can't argue the other side.
Right.
It's like, you know what? It's like we knew what was supposed to happen. It didn't happen, but nobody else did. Yeah, well, it's still a fucking chance. Okay,
Adam Arpin
but
says,
only we know that.
that's right. If Randy Savage had come back to the WWE post WCW acquisition, when would the right time have been? Could it have been WrestleMania 8? So you had Rock and Hogan and perhaps Austin Savage, or would it have been in 03 as a part of the whole Mr. America angle or something else?
Savage was there in 8. Did you mean something else?
No, X8. You know what I mean? Like 18.
Oh,
So
oh,
when there's
okay.
Rock and Hogan and you put Scott Hall in there with Austin, he's suggesting Savage Austin could have been better than Scott Hall in Austin. It would have felt like the icons of the generation before in the WWF and now current day with Rock and Austin taking on Hogan and Savage.
I mean, again, that's all subjective. You got to be in the moment, and this is the part that no one will ever understand unless you've been there. And when I say unless you've been there, unless you have been there for more than 2 to 3 years and experience dealing with the personalities, the egos, the bookings, the travel, the arenas, the other egos, and until you've dealt with all of it, it's very easy for people to say, "Oh, well, you could have just put Savage in there, and that would have been better." Okay, then what? Then what's the finish? Then after you give me that finish, then tell me what's next after that for the next 6 months. And that's where the conversations usually end, because there's a lot of times where things will be presented and people say, "Well, I don't know, that doesn't really feel right to me. Why don't we do this?" Cool, let's try that on. We do that. What do we do next week? What's the follow-up? Well, I don't know. We'll just figure that out. I know, but we have this figured out. This has a direction. This has a story. This has something laid out for a while. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But usually you've got a story laid out. You've got a direction of where you want to go. And you change one thing. That's cool, man. That may be really great for that one day. But you have to think of the next day and the next week and the next month and frankly the next year, and not just how it affects that one person because you're taking somebody else out. How does it affect everything else? And then the dominoes start to fall. And when you're the one having to pick up the dominoes, it's it can be a little challenging sometimes. So the what that's when people give me, "Oh, well, you could have done this." Really? Could
Well,
be.
I don't think
Might be.
he's.
But no. I'm not saying you did that. I'm saying in general, when people do that, it's like they'll go, well, so and so only, would didn't work on every third Tuesday, and that's when we had this event. Things like that that
Yeah.
people don't know. That we know that we have to work around and work with. So when that happens, it's you know you have to weigh in so many different things and figure it all out before you can actually say yes, this is what we're going to do, make that decision.